Hello, everybody. Live again. Good to be with you. And hopefully, this time things are working better. All right. If any of you come to the video and begin to make comments, they should now show up there. Let's go back. Good, good. All right. Well, first thing I wanted to do is thank you for watching that overview of the Communist Party of USA's article on Dugan, assuming you did. And the second thing I wanted to do was make sure that's set up the way it's supposed to be. And then I thought we could just scroll through Twitter together and see what people are saying. It's nice from time to time to just put in like Dugan or Strauss or something like that and try to find the conversations that are taking place. I'm sure you already know this, but I like to do it with Dugan and Strauss, see what people are writing. It's one of the ways I found out about that article. So let's see the Gribble report. The real movement is to vote for Democrats for harm reduction. By the way, anyone trying to smear American, what's ML? Someone tell me? What does that even mean? Shows you what I know. Using Dugan is outing themselves as a liberal dupe and very gullible. So people are reacting. If you actually go, you don't need me to tell you this, but if you go to Twitter and you search up Dugan, you'll see that there's been some reaction to that Communist Party of USA piece about him. Some people saying, you haven't read Dugan, why don't you go do that? Or you haven't read Heidegger, why don't you go do that? Or like Peter Coffin here, not sure he's responding to the article, but he's giving you a sense of what some people have to say about it. Who's this guy? Castro, humanist, Yankee, barbarian. You always got to be careful who you interact with and who you engage with online, don't you? Look at that. Things are working again the way they're supposed to, except no comments. Hello, the few of you who are here. What else is going on? What else is going on the timeline? Telling Eurasian fascists like Alexander Dugin how much they have in common and agree with them and appealing to them. Oh, this Caleb. So if you ever search for Dugan's name on Twitter, one of the things you'll see, besides myself, 90% of the time, is people accusing this guy, Caleb Maupin, of being a Dugan stooge. Now, I don't know very much about Caleb Maupin. He's a journalist for CPUSA.org, Center for Political Innovation. You can go see for yourselves who he is and what he says, but I guess at one time he was photographed together with Dugan on some panel, and now his communist comrades accuse him, kind of like that Communist Party of USA article does, of making common cause with fascists. So he sometimes responds and says, first of all, I'm not a fascist, and secondly, you don't understand Dugan. Now, I don't know anything about him, like I said, but for sure, there's always a question, have we understood Dugan when we begin to accuse him of being a fascist or neo-fascist? Anyway, really, again, I just wanted to do a live stream. First of all, to have a chance to hang out with you. Marxist-Leninists are MLs. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm not down with all of the acronyms. I wanted to make sure the chat's working like it should. Scroll through Twitter with you. Fourth position, people are discussing. What do you think would have been? Oh, here's me promoting my courses. Have to do it. What can I say? Dugin's theories are influential, at least in Russia. In 1999, he became special advisor to then Duma Speaker Gennady Seleznev. More important, his seminal work, The Foundations of Geopolitics, in which he promotes the idea of a vast Eurasian empire that looks east, not west. One of the most interesting books that I read about Dugin's influence is Charles Clover's Black Wind, White Snow, I think it's called. And there are good chapters there on Dugan. I recommend reading that at some point if these are topics that interest you. Charles Clover's Black Wind, White Snow. Probably not the only source, but the favorite of the ones that I've read. What else do we have here? Dugan as a member of the Nazi Party. Guys, those of you who are here, we're just scrolling through Twitter together to see if there are any interesting reactions to that article about Dugan and the Communist Party of the USA. I love how the dissident right understands that Jews put their ethnic interests into ideology, but when Dugan creates an ideology that is almost openly a political tool of anti-Americanism and Russian nationalism, many people are like, no, you just don't get it, Noomakhia. So for sure, Dugan has detractors who think that all of his theorizing is a smokescreen for his Russian ethnic interests. So this person is like, that's what we think about Jews, that everything they do is a smokescreen for their ethnic interests. So why don't we give Dugin the same treatment? Okay. Noomakhia, by the way, quite an interesting 20-something volume book of philosophical analysis of civilizational multipolarity. And I do have a course on it, but I don't want to sell you my course. I want to tell you that there are some good free resources. Let me just give you the link for that. Hang on a second. What's the best way to do it? Okay. I'm going to pull this up and just show you where you can find some nice free resources on Noomakhia. So the page here, let's get that URL on there for you, is eurasianist-archive.com/menu/Noomakhia Wars of the Mind. And I think this is a page where eventually there are plans to have his whole Noomakhia series translated. I don't know, but what you'll see is a little bit about this massive project of his. This is kind of like the zero volume, the Prolegomena in Search of the Dark Logos, Philosophical Theological Outlines. A pretty fascinating book. I did read it. I won't be able to translate it anytime soon, but you see it discusses, you probably can't see the Russian, and if you could see it, you may not know Russian, but it says Heidegger, Ibn Arabi, Proclus, Dionysius, the pseudo-Dionysius, let's say. So In Search of the Dark Logos is a pretty fascinating run through the subterranean Dionysian history of mystical philosophy, you could say. And Dugan himself credits this with being like the zero volume of the Noomakhia book series. I say zero because next is volume 1, Noomakhia Wars of Nous. 3, Logoi, Apollo, Dionysus, and Cybele. And the reason I'm showing you this is because if you click over on this site, you're actually going to find part of the work available in English. And this is not a trivial part. These are pretty interesting chapters. They're what I discuss in my course on Noomakhia. And just looking at the table of contents is actually also quite interesting because it shows you what else there is to examine in Dugan's first volume of Noomakhia. Plato, Aristotle, Plotinus, Valentinius, Proclus, Hermeticism, Cybele. Okay, this is pretty good stuff, worth reading and thinking about. And the reason we decided to look at Noomakhia was because of this suggestion that it's all a smokescreen for his Russian ethnic interests or Russian national interests. By the way, my personal opinion, whenever we're thinking about terms like nation, ethnos, ethnicity, we need to make sure we have the relevant distinctions to help us to do that. And if we're reading an author who has developed their own theory of how to think about those things, then we should be aware of that author's theory. So that's why I highly recommend reading Ethnos and Society or Ethnosociology, the Foundations, in order to see how Dugan himself thinks about nation, ethnos, race, people, and its relationship to civilization, multipolarity, and philosophy. Could I maybe send the links in the chat as well? Yeah, you know what? I don't know whether I can because I'm streaming with one program. I'm not right on YouTube, but what I'm going to do is just take a minute to navigate over there, drop this in the chat for you. I mean, if I put it here, does it go there automatically? Let's see, did that work? Oh, beautiful. So I don't need to go to YouTube. Let's go back here. All right, there's the link. Hopefully that's working for you. Yeah, these chapters do look fun. They are fun. It's a great book, and you should definitely read the parts of it that are available in English. So there's also a second volume, which I also discuss in my Noomakhia course in part. And let's just have a quick look while we're here together at the table of contents to this book. So you'll see that chapter 1, The Horizons of Cultures, the Geography of Logoi, is translated into English. You can access it there. But look at what's in this. The second methodological volume, Geosophy, the basic concepts of Geosophy, the Horizons of Cultures, deconstructing Eurocentrism, defining civilizations, that's a big one, another important work of Dugan's that helps you to define civilization as a theoretical concept. Well, there's a chapter on it in Fourth Political Theory, and there's also a good book on it called Theory of a Multipolar World. the topography of geosophy. And then something that he does often enough in his works, you see he's going to review a series of thinkers, starting interestingly enough from Proclus, the Neoplatonic thinker, in order to derive certain useful concepts and correspondences that he can then creatively reappropriate or approach from another perspective. So look at some of the authors that he writes about. Again, from the point of view of what they have to say about a philosophical analysis of territory. Proclus, Vico, Herder, Schelling, Hegel, Danilevsky, okay, Mackinder, Ratzel, Schmidt, another Schmidt, Boas, Spengler, Frobenius, Freud, and something that you would always want to guard against in the way you think about Dugin or present Dugin, or when you read someone else who's presented him. Imagine someone just took excerpts from his chapter on Freud and said, like, oh, look at Dugin, he's an obvious Freudian. Here's everything he wrote about Freud. Look at him. He's a Freudian psychoanalyst. That's what he is. And you don't understand that the chapter on Freud is one of 50 chapters on a million other thinkers. Or he talks about Huntington, and suddenly someone might say, oh, look, he's just a Huntington follower. No, what he tries to do as a rule is to take a broad overview of a field. Look where he begins again. Proclus, Hegel, Schmidt, Frobenius, Freud, Jung, Evola, and Guénon. People think that that's some people think these are the only figures who exist in Dugin's world. And yet, they're just two out of all of these chapters. Eliade. Okay, you might want to know what Dugin says about Mircea Eliade, if that's how you pronounce it. Or Sorokin, Durand, an important figure in Noomakhia, because of his book on the sociology of the imagination. Trubetskoy, Savitsky. Okay, you get the idea. And then, this second volume of Noomakhia had, in addition, an analysis of certain civilizations. It began the civilizational analysis. Iran, India, China, Japan, Africa, and the horizons of the Pacific. And what you see is that Dugin later said, as he began that work, that he had just started to scratch the surface of the philosophical analysis of civilizational multipolarity. So he had to begin to write volume after volume after volume, studying the concrete civilizations. Here you have Horizons and Civilizations of Eurasia, Iranian Logos, India, Civilization of the Absolute, and so on and so on and so on. There's a lot of volumes in this series. How many do we have here by the end? Let's see here. 23 volumes. My course is on the first two because they set out the methodological basis. So now I ask you, if someone has 23 volumes plus the 0 volume, the Prolegomena, 24 volumes of pretty thoughtful philosophical analysis, and you try to reduce it to a smokescreen for the defense of Russian nationalism or imperialism, I think, my personal opinion, all that is a way to excuse oneself of the effort of having to read. If you have a ready at-hand explanation for what the intellectual work is, you spare yourself the labor of having to think it through, which is quite convenient for lazy people. All right. What do we have? Hello to those of you who are here. Someone asked in the chat, is this a book? Yeah, what I've been going through, what I've been showing you is Dugin has a book series called Noomakhia. Get that on screen for you. Noomakhia. And parts of it are available in English at this website, Eurasianist Archive. There's the link on screen. I'll put it again in the chat. And you can see what's in the book, and you can see what's translated, and it's quite good. And I also mentioned that at my online school of philosophy, and political theory, there's a course there on the methodological volumes of this book. So 4 lectures where I introduce you to basically what it is that Dugin is trying to do and what he's trying to say. Someone asks here, could I get in touch with John Vervaeke? He deals with meaning. It'd be nice to see us talk about more proximal and recurrent topics. Yeah, my first exposure to John was his conversation with Peterson, which I thought was both interesting and, how could you put it? What they said was pretty interesting about truth and meaning and the divine logos and me and you and what happens when we communicate authentically and truly. But something else that was conspicuous about that conversation, when you view it from the point of view of Straussian political philosophy, was the absence of the political. Because for Strauss, at least, you can't think about Plato ultimately. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. Let me try to. You can't think about Plato unless you think about Platonic political philosophy. The importance of the political for Plato is absolutely crucial for Strauss. So any conversation that focuses on truth and meaning and authenticity and the logos, like the conversation between Peterson and Vervaeke was doing, but that leaves out the whole realm of the political, is missing something important. And the relationship between the theme of truth and politics is that in Plato's Republic, you have the defense of lying and also the decoupling of justice and truthfulness. That somehow justice requires or may require not telling the truth. So that was a part of the conversation between Peterson and Vervaeke that I thought was missing. Anyway, yeah, that's what this was. I think people are not really updated on Dugin's pragmatism because the Dugan people think of when they say Greater Russia is way more 90s, early 2000s Dugan than what Dugan thought later on. Yeah, there's a lot that he's written, there's a lot that he said, and there's a lot for us to have to read and think about in trying to understand where he's coming from. Let's go back just a few more minutes, spend some more time together here. This is kind of fun. It's been a while since I did any kind of live stream. So the last one was on the Communist Party of USA's article about Dugan, and now we're just sort of scrolling through Twitter together to see if anybody's saying anything thoughtful or funny or what have you. Well, let's see. There definitely were some responses to that article yesterday. Patagonia Dreams, my 7-year-old just read the entire Dugan bibliography from memory. Children of the future, impressive young man or woman for sure. Dugan, Hyperborean, whoops, sorry about that. Let's go back. Dugan is a lot easier to understand than most intellectuals and philosophers. It's just that his detractors read a few paragraphs and take them out of context. I think it's true that his detractors read a few paragraphs and take them out of context. And I actually saw this earlier and was thinking about it. He is easier to understand than most intellectuals and philosophers, I think. But he's easy to understand because he speaks directly about fundamental and basic issues. He's not easy to understand because the subject matter is so easy necessarily. And if you ever look up this notion in his thought, the radical subject, it's not very easy to grasp, I would say, for most people at first, on their first attempt. But yeah, he speaks simply in the same way that like a mystic speaks simply, because they've removed everything that stands in the way of themselves and what it is that they're looking at. I have students who have worked with me and they read Dugan and they see him as a breath of fresh air for that reason. Okay, back to the chat for a moment. Vervaeke has a YouTube channel where he expands and details his thought. I think it would be very fruitful if you two would talk. It would also help you network and get some viewers. Thanks for the suggestion. I might try to get in touch with him at some point. Definitely seemed like a nice guy. I've tutored a student of his before who just had nothing but the nicest things to say about him. So my first impressions are very good. Dugan needs to get on Twitter so I can complain to him about how insanely expensive his books are. Well, far be it from me to suggest that any of them are available online freely. That would be the wrong thing to do. So he's on Facebook. You can go and complain to him on Facebook. All right, I'm going to stop this in a minute, but let's just see what else here. So I've never read Dugan, but the mere fact that everyone I hate happens to hate him means he must be onto something. Yeah, Marcos, that could very much be the case. People hate Dugan because it would require them to actually read and learn new words to understand what he's talking about. I think that's true enough. The easiest thing is always to dismiss somebody on the basis of what we think we know about them, what we think we know about what they're saying. The harder thing to do is, like Jordan Peterson writes in his first 12 Rules for Life, to listen as though there's something for us to learn. All right, I'm having fun. I don't really want to stop, but let's just go a little bit further, and then we'll cut it out. This person, the actual den of literal fascist adherents. You see, he's responding to Communist USA because they're the ones who posted that Dugan article. I mean, that's the point, though. That's why this piece is necessary. It outs the so-called socks, I guess that's the way of saying like patriotic socialists or national Bolshevists in Dugan terminology, as the gross chauvinists they are, basically indistinguishable from Dugan. So here are people coming to the defense of the author of that article, which, again, I encourage you to read, think about, comment on if you want to. It'd be nice. Someone took the effort to try to make a case, and that's good. We should be thankful for that. So what else? What's this? Eurasianist Putin versus Atlanticist Biden. Alexander Dugin, Geopolitical.ru. Okay, maybe a video for another time. And fourth political theory is garbage touted by Dugan. I disagree. So I have a course on the book, but you should read it and see for yourselves. What do we have here? Flame of Liberation. You guys should be truly ashamed of yourselves. You obviously don't know what Duganism is, although the article gets some things right. Nor do you understand what Marxism is. Dugan opposes the idea of historical progress and class struggle as the motive force of history. Yeah, they say that in the article. That's why they want to reject him. Amazon has recently banned all of Dugan's writings. That's true. I don't think you could find him on Amazon. It's been true for a while now. But, according to Keaton Mansfield, you didn't see Communist Party of USA putting out a piece on corporate censorship of political ideology. All right. Okay, thanks for the recommendation, writes Chan to Communist USA. I'm on my way to order a copy of every single book Dugan has ever written. As you see, I thought that was pretty funny. So, all right, well, let's go and just give you a chance if there's anything you want to talk about in the chat for a moment, and then we'll stop. So, what's my opinion on the future of humanity? Is a dystopia incoming? Well, I'm going to tell you what. I'm just going to share with you, since we are on the topic of Dugan to a certain extent. Let me pull something up, and I'll use that as my response. You got to give me a chance to find it, though. Here we go. Let's pull this up. Okay. This guy, Rinaldo Graziani, had posted on Facebook, something that I liked, and reposted a nice quote from Alexander Dugan. There is a winter solstice in every person's life. That moment when you find yourself at rock bottom, at the bottom of despair, or in sickness, or in pain. Sometimes this torment is of the heart, sometimes of the body. But the new year in nature, in culture, in our soul, teaches us to never give up. When it's midnight, we're already close to dawn. Yes, before dawn, darkness is densest and invisible, but our deepest faith tells us that a new day awaits us on the other side. Disaster, loss, even death, nothing is the end. A new beginning is always possible, another beginning of history, of life, of philosophy. So let's just leave that with my answer on the future of humanity as a dystopian future. There's always the possibility of a new day, of a new morning, and of another beginning. Hi there, Salvatore. Nice to see you. Guys, thanks all of you for being here. It's a real pleasure and privilege to spend time with you. Until the next video, bye.